Hi, guys. Welcome to tonight's live chat. It's good to see you. It's really good to see you. I'm on like a minute earlier. So I figured I would just go ahead and sign on. Excuse me, and kind of go a little bit slow until 7:54. So hope you guys are doing okay. How has your Saturday been? Hopefully it's been smooth and calm and relaxed, because my Saturday, guys, my Saturday has been very busy. Not bad, just busy. You know, those Saturdays where you say something like, you know what, I'm just gonna run to Target real quick. I'm gonna go to Walmart real quick. Then I'm gonna go to get some food at this special shop for people with gluten-free, gluten-related allergies. I'm gonna go do some special shopping today. And special shopping turns into a car wash, going to get groceries for the week, meal prepping, going to Home Depot and Lowe's. I mean, that is how my Saturday has been. It's like I planned to do one thing and I ended up doing about 20 others. And just to make you guys laugh, this happened. I went to a store that I very rarely can go to because it's like way out in the country. It's a drive, like borderline Ohio. And I went in there. I had a cart full of stuff that I just needed to stock up on, for my business, for my home, for my mom, things like that. And I got in my car. I literally was sweating bullets. I was so tired and so hot from just shopping. Okay. And I got hit on by a grandpa. Okay. You guys can laugh. That's why I'm telling you this. We're going to start this live chat with a laugh. Okay. I saw him as the cutest, sweet old guy. He had to be like 78, 79, 80. And I was like, oh my God, is he cute? He looks like a sweet little baby. He wasn't a sweet little baby, because as soon as I left the store, he was waving and asking me to come over to his car. And I says, oh, no, no, no. And, and he's like, I just wanted to let you know you're so beautiful. He's like, do you have a man in your life? And I was like, okay, time for me to go home. Time for me to go home. So I said, oh, that's so cute of you. I see that as a compliment. Thank you so much. Have a good day. And I got in the car and drove home doing 80 miles per hour. So that's how my Saturday was. Brandy says, look, Doran's cracking up. Brandy says, my, right? Jasmina, Brandy, welcome to tonight's live chat. Jasmina, it's good to see you. Doran, I'm going to put your comment up here. Like, this is just, I'm like, what is this? It is Halloween, isn't it? Because this is not okay. Honest Living Journey, it's good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Fairy Girl, it's good to see you. Welcome. Troy Silver Fox, good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Yes. Oh my goodness. Empowered Woman, it's good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. Christina Smith, good to see you as well, my friend. Welcome back. Thank you so much, The Believer. That's really sweet of you. Yeah, but a grandpa, like, no, we're not going there. We're not doing that. No. Doran Beckford says, sorry, Tam, that was me. I didn't say that's. Oh, that's good. I love that. See, this is why we start off like this. This is why. Jacqueline Fuller, it's good to see you. Did I say hello to you? Thank you so much. That's really sweet of you. Jacqueline Fuller, welcome. I think I already said that. Coral Sky, hello and welcome. And Pulsar, it's good to see you. Oh man, And Pulsar, I don't even know what to say to that. I really don't, like you have to know what's appropriate and what's not, right? Yeah, you just do. I'm just saying. All right, Scene 68, it's good to see you. Welcome back. Good to see you tonight. Michelle Lynn, it's good to see you. You're like the mom of the group. You, Jessica J, Nancy, and Juby Joe. You guys are like the moms to me, so it's good to see you. Welcome back. All right, let's jump in. Okay, guys. Hopefully we can end this Saturday on a good note. I need it after that. I mean, that kind of terrorized me, guys. I don't know. It did something to me. Excuse me. Okay. Let's jump in. Very, very serious topic. Yes. Hold on. I have to put this up here. Curtis Draper says some old folks, zero filter. I agree. I very much agree. Okay. Callous people. Ugh, callous people. They are cold, unemotional, detached, rude, self-consumed, shallow. Did I already say that? They are difficult people. And I'm going to put this out here before we jump into tonight's live chat. Psychology still has a major problem in identifying these personalities. Now, I'm not going to tell you what we're talking about in terms of the personality just yet. I want to see if you guys can kind of point it out as we go along. Personality pathology. You guys know I talk about that all the time. Personality pathology mixed in with some spiritual aspects tonight. A little bit of Carl Jung's shadow self. I'm going to incorporate that in tonight's live chat. But we're also going to be talking just a little bit about inner demons because they do exist in a lot of the research that is now going forward. There are those small groups that feel like, let's not bring in the spiritual aspects of human beings because it takes the attention from the science and the behavior of the field and it reroutes it to this existential, philosophical, theological realm of things. And to be quite honest and blunt, psychology has never wanted to cross roads with existentialism, philosophy, or theology. And just for the heck of it, let me throw in there demonology. So, psychology has always tried to get away from that because they don't want to be looked at as a lesser science than science and medicine. They never wanted to, the field of psychology has never wanted to look less than the field of medicine and the field of science. So what do? They completely ignore and push to the side the spiritual realm, which would be philosophy, existentialism, theology, because they don't want to come across as a field that is just throwing ideas out there that they cannot prove. But what do you do when you're dealing with a person who just straight up seems evil? Everything they do feels dark and evil, right? And psychology's even gone so far to say there's something known as the dark empath or the dark triad, or these series of behaviors that includes Machiavellianism and sadism. Why? Because they know, the field of psychology knows that there's a deeper personality, there's a darker personality that lives underneath the surface. And this personality or this series of characteristics of a person exist underground in a sense, right? We're going to put quotation marks around underground because it feels like a personality that is deep, dark, ugly, and unable to be accessed in a single therapy session. So psychology, in order to keep its scientific, position in the field, they say, well, there's a deeper personality, there's a darker personality, and that is called the dark triad. That's called dark empath. And we're going to just say that those kind of personalities are a little edgy, they're a little darker, they're a little grimmer, they're sadistic, they're Machiavellian. And we're going to keep those people over there because they do exist. We just don't want to call it what it is. We don't want to say that there's a dark evil spirit that possesses those people. Okay, that's one example. We don't want to say that that's a dark individual who can't change. So we're just going to throw them under the dark empath, and we're going to pretend as if there's some darker pieces of personality that is it's not able to be accessed. I'll put it that way. It's not able to be easily accessed. Neither is it able to be easily therapized. I just made up that word, guys. So we're going to delve into that a little bit, but let's delve into without a conscience, right? Because there are some people who simply do not seem to have a conscience. They act in ways that are ugly, competitive, jealous, envious, detrimental, harmful, discriminatory, prejudice, dominating. All of those ugly characteristics often underlies or is the foundation of a person that doesn't have a conscience. Psychology says that if you project those kind of attitudes and dispositions and behaviors, and you do it in a way that is perpetual and consistent and enduring and pervasive and long term, without any feeling of guilt, wrong, or some kind of shame, then you live without a conscience. And individuals who live without a conscience, they don't follow rules. They don't follow rules. They don't fit in. Rules don't apply to them. They don't internalize the rules. What we mean by internalize the rules is most of us growing up in our lives, over time, we realized we had to learn to dress ourselves, learn to take care of hygiene, learn material to get through school. We had to get a job, right? We know that in order to do all of those things, we have to have within us this motivation, this desire, this energy to help us to engage in all of those activities, because we have to. So what has happened there? We've internalized what it is that we have to do in order to survive. And we've internalized our own behaviors, our own routines, our environment influences, our parent influences, our sibling influences, and we've internalized all of those things so that we can be independent. A person who lives without a conscience hasn't internalized anything. They haven't internalized compassion. They haven't internalized boundaries. They haven't internalized what's right and wrong. Cognitively, they know what's right or wrong, but they haven't internalized it, which means if you don't internalize it, it doesn't become a part of you. You know, it's just that thing that people tell you that you have to do. It's not internalized. When we internalized, it's been written upon our heart, mind, and soul. We understand, we get it. A person who lives without a conscience doesn't get it because they haven't internalized anything that would make them a caring, loving, feeling, empathic human being. These kind of individuals without a conscience, they operate, according to research, they operate to achieve their goals. And when they operate to achieve their goals, it can sometimes look as if they are connected and emotionally attached to people. Doesn't necessarily mean they are. You know, this is called, and you're going to want to get ready, right? Because I'm going to start dropping those new terms. This is called cognitive compensation. So I'm gonna put this in the chat box. So it's called cognitive compensation. What happens with cognitive compensation? The person doesn't have a conscience, which is an essential component of human development. We have to have that. That's why if a child does something wrong, they feel guilty. They cry. They ask for help. They say they're sorry. I didn't mean to do it. Adults, they do something wrong. They feel guilt. It's crippling sometimes, right? Because you may even feel guilt for things that you shouldn't be feeling guilt for or towards, right? But we feel that. We sometimes can engage in a situation and we feel shame. We feel doubt. We feel like something's wrong. It's not setting right with me. That means you have a conscience, and your conscience really is like this partner that has been embedded in the person that you are. And that conscience walks with you like a partner, and it helps to guide your footsteps. It helps to guide how you think and feel about things. And it can guide your morals and your ethics and your principles. But when you don't have a conscience, you almost don't have a set of principles. You don't have ethics. You don't have morals. You don't have anything that is a partner that is walking with you to help you live out the things that you're supposed to live out in a healthy way. And so cognitive compensation is what happens. Man, you know, when I talk about this topic, if I'm doing a workshop or if I'm teaching a college class, you know, I notice that there's a lot of people, if I look at their faces, you know, they kind of look like, oh my God, a light bulb moment. And I'll ask them, what personality characteristic do you think that this is? And they'll say something like a psychopath. And I'll say, yep, psychopath, but there's another one. And actually, psychopath is kind of like an umbrella term. And I'm going to get to that with you guys in just a second here. But yes, it is a psychopath, but there's two kinds of psychopaths. Did you guys know that? There's two different kinds. We're going to get to that in a minute. But when I look at them, when I look at their faces, and I'm doing this, talking about this in a workshop, or I'm teaching a class or whatever, their faces, it's like, wow, what is this? And sometimes they'll say, oh my God, that's my mother. Or, oh my God, that's my cousin. That's my uncle. That was my husband for 25 years. And I think a lot of people fail to realize that there are human beings that walk the earth daily and they don't have a conscience, and they look as if they do. They look as if they do. And that is the scary piece of the puzzle. And any kind of cold, callous person without a conscience, they can appear connected. Why? Because of cognitive compensation, because they do things in order to achieve their goals. Notice I say their goals. So if there's a goal in sight, if they have something that they want to achieve, or they have something that they want, they're going to do whatever they need to do to get it. And if that means fake their way through a conversation with you, a marriage, a family dynamic, right? A neighbor relationship, they will do it, and they will do it very well because they have a goal. And those who live without a conscience, they become an expert in the psychology of all of us in society. So let me go back over that for a second, because that's something to really catch and hold on to. They become experts when you don't have a conscience and you don't have that internalized set of morals, ethics, principles, shame, guilt. You don't have that. You're really like an empty shell. In order to achieve their goals, it's a game. It's a chess match. It's a checker match, It's a sport event. They know they're going to make that move and that move and that move. They know they need to build up their muscles. They know they need to get electrolytes so they can be stronger when they train. These individuals are callous and cold and highly detached from other people. And the scary part remains with these people, that if they don't have a conscience, they play the game with those of us out in society by learning how we think, learning what we want, learning, right, that we want kindness, compassion, empathy, relationship, emotional attachment, right? And in order for them to manipulate us, they have to study us. So just like we're talking on here tonight, we're studying, we're learning, we're doing the science, we're doing the research in this conversation. People without a conscience, they do the same thing, but they do it in a different way. Sometimes they jump from relationship to relationship to relationship, and they learn things and they take that lesson and they go to the next relationship. Or sometimes in a family dynamic, which we're talking about tonight, in a family dynamic, they just kind of stay wrapped up in the family and they stir things, they manipulate, they triangulate, they gossip, they lie, they're deceptive, right? They do a lot of things that they need to do to learn how things work. And they go to the next relationship with what they've learned. And so they can really pretend as if they understand you. And the scary part is sometimes, depending on what is broken within us, what's needy, right? Well, what are our needs? Are we grieving? Are we feeling lost and confused in our lives? And if we are, then they know exactly what to do to get to the bottom of who we are. And they won us over. Friendly old person, sweet, innocent teenager, right? Boss that just told you he's going to support you all the way, although he's expecting something in return down the line. These people are dangerous. They are dangerous, and they exist without a conscience. Cognitive compensation. Here's what it is, guys. It's when people can behave as if they have a conscience. They behave as if they have a conscience, and they are compensating for what they do not have emotionally. That's why we call it cognitive compensation. Cognitive compensation is people who can appear as if, I'm going to put appear in big bold letters because that's the key word tonight, appear. So people who can appear as if they have a conscience. Okay, so there are people who can appear as if they have a conscience, but they are doing this by compensating for what they do not have. Come on. My buttons are acting weird tonight, guys. They are compensating for what they do not have emotionally. Okay, cognitive compensation. I'm compensating. I'm appearing as if I understand you. I can feel your pain. I can be emotional. I can be attached. I'm appearing empathic. I'm appearing emotional to compensate for what I don't have, which is called affective empathy, right? And you want to consider that an understanding of someone else's emotions. They pretend. That is the key word. They pretend. They pretend. It's pretty sad. I saw somebody say they're awful. I think that was you, empowered woman. Was that you? Let me see if I can go back and find it. Okay, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. I gotta find it. But Honest Living Journey says they are pathetic. They very much are. Yeah. But are they going to are they going to admit that they're pathetic and they're awful and they are wasteful in relationships? No, not at all. Not at all. It was you, Alexandria. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you in tonight's live chat. I just looked over and I happened to see this. Yes, they are awful. And they are awful because they have not been built. They have not been developed to a place that would make them healthy people to be in a relationship with. That's the scary and the sad part, right? So cognitive compensation, they have no effective empathy, meaning that they don't have the ability to put themselves in the shoes of somebody else and say, they're hurt, they're angry, I can feel that, they're grieving, they feel lost and confused in their life, they had a really hard journey, the list goes on. They don't have that capability. So what do? They cognitively compensate. And cognitive compensation can be what's called cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is this. It's, I know what you want, need, and would like, but I can't feel it. There you have it. Cognitive empathy. I rationalize, I intuitively, I logically understand what you want. I know what you want, need, desire, the list goes on, but I can't feel that. I don't have effective empathy. It's all cognitive. And a person without a conscience, we might as well call them a psychopath, a sociopath, somebody who is severely antisocial, who hasn't gotten the experience among other human beings that they should have. And they are immune to any kind of compassion and love and connection. It's really interesting how they are. Are they born this way? Some research says they are. Do they learn to be this way? Some research says they do. And is this a mental illness or a personality disorder? It's not a mental illness. They are not mentally ill. They are personality disordered. So I'm going to put that in the chat box. They are personality disordered, meaning their personality is not easy to change. It is disordered. It is backwards, twisted, skewed, distorted, and strange. The personality has been, if you imagine a map on a table, right? It's a whole bunch of stops and stop signs and road signs and Route 20 and Route 30, right? You've got this map and it's giving you direction on which way to go, right? And instead of using that map to guide life, to guide relationships, to get where you need to get, the psychopath, the person without a conscience, they decide, I'm going to go this way. And I'm going to go this way without the map because that way is better for me. I get what I want. I don't have to work for anything really. I manipulate everybody. I triangulate in relationships when I can. I get a kick out of being smarter than those people who are using that roadmap to guide their lives. I get a kick out of being better than that because I'm over here and I'm studying them. I'm studying how to be loving. I'm studying how to be in a relationship. I'm studying how to be what looks like a Christian, a pastor, a bishop, a guider, a leader, whatever. They study. They aren't. They don't have. They study to appear that they have. And that is the scary piece of the puzzle. Now, let me tell you why these people, they can kind of become very hostile and angry, and they become hostile and angry because oftentimes they either grow up in a household that doesn't allow for a healthy development of a conscience. They almost have to be in fight or flight mode all the time. They have to constantly battle childhood trauma, sometimes a really messed up, twisted family life, dysfunctional and emotionally detached parents. I'm going to talk about why a person can develop everything else but a conscience in a minute here. But they're so angry and hostile because of the lifestyle that they have had to grow up in, the things they've learned and the things that they had absolutely no access to, which is love, family, stability, equilibrium, right? Which is balance. They have absolutely not had that experience. And so it kind of creates this shell of a human being that, is trying to exist in a world that they simply don't understand, and they don't care to understand because in a sense they're operating on a different spectrum than we are down here. They're somewhere else. They can look the part and act the part, but they are truly not there with us as we think they are. A lot of times these individuals without a conscience, they're angry, they're hostile because of what we call family disillusionment. Okay. Family disillusionment. What is that? Family disillusionment. It's misaligned expectations. Misaligned expectations of family and the family dynamic. Family disillusionment. Misaligned expectations within a family dynamic. There's often in a family that is disillusioned, there is often conflict that's perpetual, misunderstandings that never get cleared up, enmeshment. So everybody is too much like this. It's too much closeness. It's so much closeness. There's no space. There's no privacy. There's none of it. It's conflict driven. And it is confusing for the person without a conscience to kind of accept reality. So they are stuck between, I'm going to say some people without a conscience are stuck between idealism and reality. My goodness, if I can talk. Idealism and reality. Most people who are living life without a conscience at some point in their development in their life, maybe as they were a child, they've gotten stuck between what they idolize or what they believe is the ideal. So technically what they want, what they hoped family would be, they get stuck between idealism and reality. And a cold, callous psychopath or sociopath or a person without a conscience, these kind of individuals often grow up in households where there's family disillusionment. What they hoped isn't. What they wish they had will never be. And so they get stuck. There's misaligned expectations. They have expectations that's way up here. The reality of their family dynamic has them down here, right? They want to be up here. they're here. And so it's painful. And so they go through this kind of painful realization that the family or individuals within it's really scary, because they are not what they hoped and idolized them to be. And it's kind of like this stone cold anger and hostility that can develop in them over time. And sometimes they become Ted Bundy because of that. They become forgetting most of their names. We have such a history of psychopaths, and I'm forgetting their names. Darn, they're all slipping me right now. But, these kind of individuals can evolve into the cold, callous psychopaths that we see on TV, we see in the news, and we've had in our history, right? Jeffrey Dahmer, there we go. So Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. There was another one. His name almost came to me. But you have these guys in our history, and we look at them and we think, oh, that was in the past. That's history. Nobody as close as in my family or living next door to me or standing behind me in the grocery stores like Ted Bundy, or Alex Ribel or James Holmes. But the reality is, yes, there is. A psychopath isn't that big, ugly creature that we think they are. They don't always look mean. They don't look, quote unquote, crazy, for lack of a clinical term. They don't have this look of, I'm going to kill everyone. They don't hide away in dark alleys in rural areas. Most of the time, psychopaths, those who do not have a conscience, they hide behind office desks. They hide in the uniform and the scrubs of a nurse, a doctor. They hide in our grocery stores, and they ring us up when we're trying to get our groceries and get out of the store. They work on our cars when we drop them off to get an oil change, have tires changed. They work in Walmart. They work in Target. They are the CEO of Sam's Club and Walmart. These are individuals who exist in everyday life. And I wouldn't have known that hadn't I worked in a variety of environments that gave me that up close and personal experience that, oh my God, this used to be my mentality. When I worked in the juvenile justice system, when I visited jails often and provided counseling, when I worked with kids and adolescents and families who clearly had deep-seated problems that were not going to ever go away, the experience for me was often, oh my God, this is not in the books, is it? This is not your textbook psychology. I've got to sink or swim. And I have to figure out how this person thinks. What's the research behind their behavior? What's their attitude? Why are parents like this, right? What's going on here? They are scary human beings, and we really do have to study them. Now, let me also mention too, the different types of psychopathy. Let me add this in the chat box for you. And then I'm going to tell you the challenges that you are likely to face with these people. And then I'm going to go to the chat box, and then we're going to talk of demons, inner demons, and Carl Jung. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute here. But let me say there are, two kinds of psychopaths. I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Two kinds of psychopaths. Psychopath 1, primary psychopath. Oh my goodness. My buttons are sticking, guys. Psychopath. So primary psychopath. What is that? Primary psychopath. They are low anxiety. There's a deficit in empathy. So let me put these down. So low anxiety, there's deficit in empathy. There's a deficit in empathy. They are low anxiety. They are individuals who show fearless dominance. They show fearless dominance. And I'm trying to think of another one for you. They're charming, and they are also calculating. Charming and calculating. Psychopath number 1. We call it primary psychopathy. That's a primary psychopath over there, because he's calculating, he's charming, very low anxiety. So he's in control. She's in control. They don't really come across as neurotic at all. They tend to be in this laid back mode of things. They're not going to rush themselves. They're not going to easily be intimidated. They're going to appear as if they are very, very firm in their identity and very much in control. The secondary psychopath is the individual with high anxiety. So they're a little bit more clumsy, they're a little bit more impulsive and hostile. So they're impulsive, hostile. These are your incarcerated individuals. That's really what this is. Secondary psychopathy is the ones who end up incarcerated because they don't think before they act. They're impulsive. They're highly anxious. They're the rule breakers. I'm just going to speed down this highway. This highway says that it is 70 miles per hour. I think I'm going to push that to around 88, 90 because I can. And I'm going to drive up on somebody's bumper and try to push them over the speed limit because I can. And I'm going to tailgate until I get my way because I can, until the police pulls you over and you end up in jail. And so secondary psychopathy is just that. I'm a rule breaker. I'm highly anxious. I'm impulsive. I don't know how to sit still. I'm reactive. I have this emotional volatility. Volatility, right? Anything can set me off. And I'm going to run this land as much as I can and the people in it. And I may not even listen to the police. And heck with the judge, because they're not going to sentence me. I already know the rules. And I already know what the judge is probably going to do. As a matter of fact, I know the judge already. I know first and last name, and that is really what secondary psychopathy is. I'm on top of everything. Nothing's going to rule me. Although I'm impulsive and I'm reactive and I have this emotional volatility, they are very methodical as well. Not as calculating as the primary psychopath, but they can also be quite calculating and manipulative themselves. So, I'm sure you can think of some people, guys, in your family who are like this. There's the primary psychopathy and the secondary psychopathy. And once you learn to tease apart the differences, it's going to be a little bit easier to figure out who a person is. Now, the challenges, before we go to the chat box, the challenges that you are likely to have with these people in psychology, and research backs this up as well. And I've seen this in sessions or in places where I've worked in the past with these people. They have destructive patterns of behavior. They're constantly destructive. They're never going to be peacemakers. They're very reactive and they are manipulative. So there's never going to be any peace. They are going to cause destruction wherever they go. They have very poor developmental experiences. So typically childhood is really rocky for these people, these family members. They may have had childhood trauma. They may have had experiences where they've witnessed domestic violence for many years between mom and dad. Maybe they were sexually and physically abused and neglected. Like something terrible has happened most of the time in the childhood of these people. So they have poor developmental experiences. They may also have unresolved trauma. Maybe they saw a murder. Maybe they, saw a sexual assault or a rape and it really turned their head around and they became hostile and angry. And because their family was so mixed up and twisted and skewed, they kind of had to compensate for what they didn't have. And so that became some kind of mental game. They had to be smarter than everybody else. They had to make sure that they remained on top of everybody else, and develop this disillusioned person. And they have a misalignment of expectations with reality, right? And it creates this bad mixture. It almost feels like a potion that develops these kind of people. Traumatic brain injury may also be an issue with these people. Sometimes if there's a traumatic brain injury to the frontal lobes behind the forehead, we may have tons of impulsivity. We may have terrible experience making decisions. Our decision making is pretty skewed. Personality changes can happen there. Have you guys ever heard of Phineas Gage? He's a character from psychology. He's like in the book of psychology, the introduction to psychology book. And he was a man. He was a railroad worker. And, as he's working, as the story tells it, he's working on a railroad. And something happened where, he made a mistake. And one of the railroad tracks, I believe it was, somehow ended up in the air. And it went through, let me think of this for a second. I think it went through the left side of his eye, okay? Eye socket, up through his parietal lobes, which is on top of the head, parietal lobes, out top of his head. It might have been this side. I can't remember. It's been too long ago for me. But Phineas Gage suffered a traumatic brain injury. But what psychology has always said about him, because he is the student for all of us in psychology, especially an introduction to psychology class, that traumatic brain injury led to a change in behavior. He could play the piano as an expert. He didn't lose that ability, but what he did lose is his humble, low-key, well-controlled self. He lost that. He became ferocious and angry and hostile and smart talking and just rude. And according to the history on Phineas Gage, he also became very profane in terms of his language. Everything was a cuss word. Everything was a curse word. He was just not the humble, nice man that he was before the accident. So some research does highlight that traumatic brain injury can really do a number on personality. And so if you have a person without a conscience, keep in mind, maybe there was a traumatic brain injury. It doesn't always have to be a psychological trauma. It could be a traumatic brain injury. They also tend to be very emotionally detached, and so does their parents. He almost came to my mind. Oh boy, I can't think of him. I may have to Google it in a minute here, but his parents, he's a known psychopath. He's also another study for those of us who study psychology. And his mom was very wild and out of control, psychologically and emotionally detached. And she kind of built this individual within him that led him down the road of becoming a psychopath, There's also this connection between severe physical abuse or neglect or severe corporal punishment and the development of a personality shift. You can beat a child so much that they become angry and hostile. They turn their emotions off. They become numb. And they say, you know what? No more pain for me because I'm going to do the infliction of pain this time. I had a client one time like that. He said to me, I'm going to do the pain and the affliction. I am no longer a victim. And was my therapy going to help him get through it? Was my expert coworker who deals with psychopaths going to help him? Absolutely not, because he became an individual who wasn't going to deal with any more pain. So he became a lifelong psychopath, a wonderful, sweet child, but a long-term psychopath, They have episodic disturbance of affect. Episodic disturbance of affect. What that means is they are disturbed. And sometimes you can see when they flip a switch. You can see when they change. It's interesting. And you don't know what's going to push a button for these people to shift, and once they shift, we're not to expect them to be kind after that because they don't have a conscience. If they're kind, remember guys, if they're kind, they have a goal. And they're going to do whatever it takes to get to that goal. There's no emotional connection, Let me also say before we go to the chat box that secondary psychopathy, there may be an ounce of emotional affect. So there may be an ounce of affective empathy. They may have the capacity to feel, but they tend to be very picky and choosy in what they're going to be emotional about. You know what I mean? And sometimes they can turn it off and on. So secondary psychopathy, a person who is labeled in that category, they can sometimes have a little bit of empathy. They can. Primary psychopathy, there's no empathy at all. Okay. All right. Let me go to the chat box, guys, and engage you just a little bit here. Then we're going to talk about inner demons and Carl Jung's shadow work. And then we're going to talk about the impact on you very briefly. Okay. Lori, it's good to see you. Hello and welcome. It's good to have you in tonight's live chat. Dr. Right Life, it's good to see you. Welcome back. Dr. Right Life says psychology must deal with perception of actual reality, just as religion, philosophy, economics, government, etc. do. True. Very much agree with that. Very much agree with that. It kind of keeps us back though, right? And you know, let me look at my show notes here, because I did put some show notes in here about states of mind. And let me bring this up, Dr. Right Life. I'm glad you pointed that out, because if you do some of the research, you will find, and this is what I studied so fervently in college and in grad school and after grad school, was the states of mind in different fields and theologies, or theoretical orientations, I should say. And so here's what happens. States of mind in demonology, okay, that refers to possession by a demon or an inner spirit or inner demons. It's interesting. Psychology has called that, you ready for this? Dissociation, compulsion, or trauma reenactment. Now, some people are probably like, what the heck? Yes. Demonology, whatever demonology talks about and refers to, psychology goes behind demonology and says, no, we're going to put it this way. So demonology says possession by a demon. That's what they consider a problem. A person who comes to them and says, you know what, I'm doing A, B, and C, and I have no control. I have no self-control. I'm harming people in my life. I'm drinking, I'm doing drugs, and I can't get out of that addiction. I'm stuck. Demonology says, well, then you're possessed. Not always. But if this has gotten to a place where you are completely out of control and you are harming yourself and others, and no therapy is working to help you, and no philosophy and existentialism is there to make sense out of your behavior, demonology says we're going to call it possession, because something's inhabited you. Something has taken you over. You know, Carl Jung calls it the shadow self. The shadow self. There's bits and pieces of who you are that's dark, and it's inside of you. And it's taking over. You know, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second here. Demonology says it's possession. Psychology says it's dissociation, it's compulsion, it's trauma reenactment, right? Psychology also says it's impulse addiction or self-sabotage. Demonology says, no, it's not. It's called struggling with inner demons, right? It's struggling with your mind. It's struggling with who you are spiritually and emotionally. You're misaligned somewhere. You know, psychology says, no, you're not. Let's just do some psychotherapy. Let's do some shadow integration. You know, demonology and philosophy says, let's do an exorcism. You know, psychology says, we're not going to do an exorcism. We're going to do some psychotherapy. We're going to do some catharsis. We're going to do some shadow integration. It's so very interesting when you look at the different fields. You see that they're all relating to the same thing, but under different labels. Isn't that cool? Carl Jung calls it shadow self. Demonology calls it possession or inner demons. You know, philosophy calls it, you know, what does philosophy call it? What did I just say, guys? Let me go back. States of mind. Psychology, philosophy calls it states of mind. Existentialism calls it existential dread, existential crisis. You know, it's very interesting. And it's like, wow, you know, everybody's talking about the same thing, but in different ways. It's like looking at a map on a table, you know, and usually the concepts, if you look at them, you know, if you lay them out and look at the concepts, they all integrate somehow. And that is really an interesting thing. Maybe we can talk about those things sometime in the future, because I'm not going to get into all of that tonight. But maybe we can talk about that, how the different fields are actually talking about the very same thing, but they're calling it different things. But at the end of the day, for lack of a clinical way to explain this, they're all talking about the same thing, but using different labels. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Okay. All right, let's go to the next comment, guys. Let me figure out where we are here. Rochella, hello and welcome. It's good to see you in tonight's live chat. Yeah, Rochelle, I'm just going to leave your comment up there so people can see what it is. Okay, give it a think. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you in tonight's live chat. Yes, this is a topic that is really dark. I agree. I agree. Yeah, totally agree with that. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to figure out where I am in here. Okay, Jamal Obama, hello and welcome. It's good to see you. I'm glad to see you back tonight. Jamal says, how does someone become a person with a conscience? Well, if you think about everything we just talked about, erase all of that and you have a person with a conscience. Now, there's a biological, neurological, and spiritual component to a conscience. You have this genetic and biological piece of the puzzle that says you kind of have to have the genes, the biological makeup, in order to have the capacity to have a conscience. In some of Sigmund Freud's work, without getting too deep into Sigmund Freud, he believed that we have a very, very strong conscience, and it is built starting in the mother-child, father-child relationship, built in childhood, and is developed over time. And he also believed that we all have a conscience, but it's a conscience that is either going to be good or evil. Without getting too far into Sigmund Freud, let me just say that he believes that a conscience begins in childhood. And so if you have a pretty traumatic, skewed, messed up kind of a childhood, it's a possibility that you will lose touch with your conscience, and you kind of grow further and further away from it as you develop and as time goes on. So and then if you think about a psychopath or a person without a conscience, as I just talked about, they are sometimes very disillusioned, and they're having a very hard time accepting that they are stuck between, what was ideal and what is reality. And so a child who's growing up in a family where there's disillusionment, there's emotional detachment, mom and dad are immature, there's tons of trauma and domestic violence, and there's a lot of physical aggression, relationship aggression, the individual develops over time this idea that this is how life goes, and this is a part of development. This is something that is normalized, and so they kind of become, what's the word, kind of overtaken by that very disturbing, messed up life. And so they become a person that isn't able to have a conscience, if that makes sense. They kind of grow further and further away from having a conscience. So, a person that has all of those elements in their world growing up, they are likely not going to have a conscience. So kind of look at it that way. The opposite of everything we just talked about is a person who has a conscience, right? If you don't have all of those pieces to the puzzle in your world, you most likely have a very stable, well-developed, healthy conscience. I hope that made sense. Okay, and Jamal, I do see you say without, right? Yeah, here you go. You say without. Yep. Troy Silver Fox says you end up like a kite that broke the string without morals. Yeah, that's a good point. I like that analogy. Yes, I like that. Penny and Rose, hello, welcome back. It's so good to see you back. Okay, let's keep moving, guys, because we're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. Some of you have questions for me. Lori, you say, really? Do tell, Tam. Did I say anything that maybe you were looking for, Lori? I hope I covered it, because I don't remember what we were talking about there. I'm sorry. If you want me to talk about it, let me know. Let me know. I'll get it before we sign off. Alexandria says, so everyone here has family who hates them. I'm happy to network with anyone who wants to. We can talk about so much together. Yeah, I totally understand. Yep. That's why this platform exists. It's like, this is a place to integrate and to learn and to grow and to heal a little bit over time. You know what I mean? And to have the truth validated. So, Brondo, it's good to see you. Welcome back, my friend. She says, dangerous individuals. Yes, agree. They are very dangerous. Christine, it's good to see you. Welcome back. She poses the question, antisocial psychopath. So let's look at it this way. Let me give you kind of like a visual here for a second. A lot of people get stuck here. And a lot of my clients get stuck here too. So let me give you a visual of kind of what this looks like. Hold on. I'm just going to give you a quick visual. Okay. So this is kind of how I had to conceptualize it when I was in grad school, because it made more sense to me that way. Okay. Okay, so an antisocial personality, okay? Antisocial personality is the clinical version. The clinical version. Okay? So this is kind of how I look at it this way. Okay. Antisocial personality. Umbrella. See that as an umbrella. Okay. Psychopath 1 and 2 is under the antisocial personality, and sociopath is on the other side. Okay. So really what I'm showing you there is antisocial personality is the umbrella. That person may or may not become a psychopath, may or may not become a sociopath. What happens when a person is antisocial personality disorder, when a person has that diagnosis, it makes it a lot easier for them to slide down the rabbit hole of becoming a cold, callous, unemotional psychopath. Psychopath 1 or psychopath 2. It makes it a lot easier for them to somehow become a sociopath, which is not as strategic, calculating, and dominating as the psychopath, but they also have a cold callousness about them. So it may be helpful to look at it that way. The clinical term is antisocial personality disorder. The layman, everyday pop psychology a definition is a psychopath and a sociopath. Those are not clinical terms. So maybe look at it that way as well. Antisocial, clinical label. Psychopath and sociopath, more of a layman's way of describing behavior that is severely antisocial. That helped me out a couple years ago because in grad school, in order for us to understand personality, we had to be able to understand what makes a personality different from another characteristic or a mental illness, you know what I mean? And so the best way to look at that again is antisocial personality disorder is the clinical label. Somebody can have the capacity to become a sociopath or a psychopath, right? And if that person becomes a psychopath, they may also become a primary psychopath or secondary psychopath. So I hope that was helpful. It can get really confusing, right, guys? Christina Smith says, everyone needs to have a moral compass. I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. Virginia Liu, hello and welcome to the channel. It's good to have you. And thank you for being a member. It's good to see you. Church of Philly Strong Watch, hello and welcome. It's good to see you back tonight. And yes, they are very dangerous people. Yep. Because they are dangerous because they know how to figure most people in society out. That's the scary part of who they are. Excuse me, give me 1 second, guys. Okay. Curtis Draper asks, does that make them more objective? I think we're talking about what, the psychopath? If we're talking about the psychopath, yes. Or are we talking about cognitive compensation, cognitive empathy, family disillusionment? If we are, yes, it does make them more objective. They tend to sit out from the family. The family is interacting here, and they're all in the family dynamic. And a psychopath tends to be kind of back here watching, you know. They're watching and calculating and trying to figure out. It's almost like they're their own psychologist. They can't see that they're unstable. They can't see that they are dangerous. A lot of times they believe that they're operating in a normal way, which is why they don't come to therapy most of the time. But a lot of times they can't see themselves. They definitely see their family. And a lot of times they definitely see everybody else, because remember, they've got to study you in order to get over on you. So they're very interesting. There's a reason why we're all trying to still figure out in the field of psychology how these kind of people interact and behave. They're ever evolving. I don't think they're ever going to not evolve. We're going to constantly be faced with new behaviors and attitudes and mindsets and dispositions. Searching for truth. I haven't seen you in so long. It's so good to have you back tonight. Welcome. Searching for truth says, great subject tonight. I can relate to this. Thank you so much. I'm glad you can relate on one side. You know what I mean? I'm glad that you're here with us, but at the same time, it's a sad reality, right? Yeah. All right, let's keep going. Ellie Wen says, let me go back to Ellie Wen. I feel like I haven't pulled you up here much this weekend. Ellie Wen says, a very dangerous empty shell at that. 100%. Yep. Yeah, Fairy Girl says Daryl Brooks. My God. Have you guys watched his court hearing? The old court hearing that he was? Oh my God. I'm a very conservative person, but I was watching him and I could feel my insides screaming, Fairy Girl, shut up, And then, if I wasn't screaming, shut up, I'm like screaming at the judge to act like she can get on top of this psychopathic personality, I can't watch it. It makes me so mad, You just had to bring him up, Fairy Girl. No, but you're right. I'm so glad you brought him up, because that's exactly who I was thinking about. Daryl Brooks is in there too. And what's scary about him, you ready for this? What's scary about him is he's an expert in projection. He's an expert in projection. He's an expert in projecting that he is intelligent, that he knows the law, that he is very calculative, that he is very intelligent. The reality is, no, he's not. He's not intelligent about the law. He was misappropriating a lot in that court dynamic. He was at times mispronouncing things, and other times misinterpreting the law, trying to appear as if he understood. But he would be considered a secondary psychopath because he's highly anxious and neurotic. He's impulsive and doesn't know how to think and calm down so he can think appropriately. He really was a terrible representative for himself. And he's impulsive and a rule breaker. So, I'm glad you brought it up. And he does have this volatility that's inside of him. You can see that when he would be getting upset. So, to be very honest, it was a clown show. For those of you who know or don't know the case, it was a clown show. And he really... the only thing that he did for himself was prolong the going to prison, judgment. That's really what he did, is prolong the whole thing and got on everybody's nerves because he didn't have what he wanted to project that he had. And so that would be a secondary psychopath indeed. MS, it's good to see you, my friend. Welcome back. I hope you're doing better today. MS says, my family is littered with people without a conscience, but look as if they do. My bro won't listen to me, as his behavior is literally killing me. I'm disgusted with him. I understand. I get it. Sometimes that's the dynamic. I'm sorry that you're going through that. Nobody wants to go through that with family, right? We automatically want them to hear us and understand us. It's a very, very sad reality. Jessica J says, I don't understand how a person cannot have a conscience or a moral compass. I know, right? I know. That is exactly why they get away with what they get away with. You know why, Jessica J? Because there's a lot of us that feel we cannot understand the absence of a conscience. It's really hard for us to conceptualize that because we're built differently. Think of the process of being built. Being built means, as a human being, that you have genes and biology. You have learned experience. You hear things. You experience things. There's sensory and perceptual experiences that helps to mold things for you. We have a very, very intelligent brain that's multidimensional. Then we also have a spirit and a soul that's also multidimensional. But when you have a person who doesn't have a conscience, they don't really have all of those pieces to the puzzle. They are completely built different. And when you begin to kind of digest and internalize that that's a person who's built very different over there, then it starts to make a little bit of sense. But it's hard to use our empathy. It's hard to use our conscience. It's hard to use our spirit and our soul and our intelligence, our self-awareness, our awareness of the world to figure out a person who is absent of all of that. It's a really interesting thing. It is. Penny and Rose says, when you have spent time around them, you feel disoriented. Yes, you can. You can feel very disoriented. Excuse me. You can feel disoriented because they are so unhuman in a lot of the ways that they think, feel, and behave, Yeah. It's sad, right? Scene 68 says they're worse than storybook villains. Well, I agree. I agree with that. Okay, let's keep moving, guys. The Good Glow, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for that. I truly am humbled by how you introduced me. I was looking at some of the live chats that we've done over the past couple of months, and I'm just so grateful. Thank you for that. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Fairy Girl, I'm going to put you up there. I'm going to put you up there. Give It a Think says, they can be very strategic, but can be impulsive too. They watch us and they hide their true nature. Yep. Summarizing exactly what I've mentioned. Christy says, it's been a wake-up call. It's been a wake-up call to realize that my own mother and father are like this and explain so much, but it is also devastating to realize they're incapable of loving me. That is so very sad, but well said. I have a lot of clients that are going through that. I'm sorry that you were going through that. That's not good. That's very difficult. Lore Fed, it's good to see you, my friend. Welcome back. All right, let's keep moving, guys, because I'm so behind in the comments. Honest Living Journey says, emotionally detached pest and very toxic to everyone who comes around. I very much agree with that. Very much agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put your comment up there, Fairy Girl. Fairy Girl says they don't ruminate guilt. Yeah, I agree. Like we would. I'm going to say like we would. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Okay, let's keep moving, guys. I don't want to miss anybody here in tonight's live chat. 504 Impress. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you. Welcome to the channel. 504 Empress, excuse me, says most of the time they are Fran. I'm not sure what that means. Do you mean Fran? No, you don't mean fam. Fran. Let me look that up really quickly. F-R-A-N. Is that something I don't know. I don't know. If it means something, guys, help me understand. Help me understand. Lil Johan, we're going to keep moving. Lil Johan, hello and welcome. That's so sweet. Right back at you. It's good to see you. Welcome to tonight's live chat. It's good to see you, my friend. Okay, let's keep moving because I'm behind. You guys are fine. I'm behind. Church of Philly Strong Watch, you said, I need to leave. I'm guessing that's your personal situation. If so, I understand. I understand. Sometimes we need that push, right? Searching for Truth says, I'm a victim of this. What can I do to get out from under these types of relationships? Well, here's the thing. You have to understand who you're dealing with first. You have to understand who you're dealing with first, because if you make the wrong move with a psychopath, somebody that doesn't have a conscience. You're asking for a battle. You don't have to be afraid of them, but you do have to understand how they play the game. So understand what kind of a person you're dealing with, and then make your move from there. You don't want to pull out of a situation with a psychopath that makes them feel threatened, angry, demeaned, stupid, because the minute you do that, they're coming after you, because somewhere in their mind, they have to make up for what they lost. And sometimes making up for what they lost means creating an even bigger problem for you. So you want to understand who you're dealing with first, and then slowly come out of that. We can have a live chat if you guys want to. Let me know in the chat box if you want me to do a chat where we talk about how to deal with these kind of people and how to get out of relationships with them. Okay, so we can talk about that in the future. Virginia Lou, it is so great. It's great what you have done tonight, which is gifting someone, I think, with a membership. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you. Hubani, I hope I'm saying that correctly, or Habuni, or Habuni. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you in tonight's live chat. Habuni says, I think kind of used to be this way, not because I was malicious. I see, you're saying, I think I kind of used to be this way because I was malicious, but because I was inadequate. There's a possibility that you can be that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a psychopath. It could mean that you have become numb over time. And there's a difference between being without a conscience and being a psychopath and being numb. So it's figuring out where you are, If you think that you used to be a psychopath, then you're not a psychopath, because most psychopaths do not have self-awareness. So if you think that you may have been one, or that you are one, or that you've come across that way, then that's your sign right there. You're not a psychopath. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Scene 68 says, can generational trauma, cause someone to be personally disordered? I know a few family members who were totally different people than they turned out to be, which is pure evil. Yeah, I totally get it. Absolutely. Generational trauma that is not healed. It's not dealt with. It's not talked about in the open. It's not worked on. Yes, it can traumatize a person multiple times over time, right? And if they have their own personal trauma on top of that, it can all become complex PTSD. And so the person is dealing with a series of traumatic experiences. And yes, it can shift their personality, and it can also shift their mind. All right, let's keep moving. Smiley D, hello and welcome. It's good to have you in tonight's live chat, and welcome to the channel. She says, sounds like my estranged, husband. Yes. Lori, I love this. You say, God, I need this roadmap analogy. God, I need this roadmap analogy. So much to try to understand. Thank you. You're welcome. All right, let's keep moving, guys, so we can get to some more content. The believer says, you were totally describing my mother. That's awful. I'm so sorry. Nobody wants to say that that's their mother, right? All right, guys, let's keep moving here. Axe to Edge, did I say hello to you tonight? I'm so sorry if I didn't. Hello and welcome back to tonight's live chat. Axe to Edge, you have me cracking up half the time. When I go back and look at the chat box, oh my God, you're so funny. Oh my goodness, I think I told you that once before. All right, let's keep moving. Kim, hello and welcome. It's good to see you back in tonight's live chat. I'm just going to put your comment up on screen for people to see. I see a lot of new people in the chat box tonight. We have Super Committee. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you and welcome to the channel. Super Committee says, I just hate how my parents will start in it. Wait, I just hate how my parents will start in it. Takes love. I see. That's good. I'm trying to make that register for me. I'm sorry, Super Committee. It's not registering. Okay. If you want to repose that, I'm happy to read it again. I'm happy to read it again. But it's not clicking for me. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was trying to give it time to click, you know? And Pulsar says, when I hear people talk about those who lack a conscience, I sometimes catch myself wondering if I'm like that. Well, there's a possibility, right? Sometimes trauma can lead to not having a conscience or having a really powerful conscience, you know? Sometimes being numb and putting up your defense mechanisms and your boundaries can feel like not having a conscience, right? But at the end of the day, you most likely have a conscience. It's just weakened or hidden or pushed down, or, you know, but if you don't have a conscience, then you probably are a psychopath. And so I doubt if that's what you are, Impulsor. Christine, thank you for that. Yes, Jeffrey Dahmer was one. Oh man, his name almost came to me. His name, Jeffrey Dahmer. Yes, you guys are telling me. Oh my God, Curtis Draper, did you have to go there? Did you have to go there? OJ? Oh my God, you guys are trying to get me snatched off of YouTube. Jeez Louise. Oh God. And says Brian Cobiger. I don't even know if I know that one. Is it Cobiger? I don't know him. That's somebody I need to look up maybe. Yeah. You guys are trying to help me out. Thank you so much. Neftuja, hello and welcome. It's good to see you. And thank you for the super chat tonight. Hope you're doing well. Neftuja says, the interesting part is that they believe everyone is the same way. They are. Yes, they do. And they greatly distrust kind and genuine people, perceive them as fake. Yeah, absolutely. Some are like that. I agree. I very much agree. Christine, says they're so charismatic. Yes, they are. They are. Some of the pastors, right? A pastor that a lot of people knew. I can't think of the church now. Guys, I blank a lot on Saturdays. I do. He's a well-known pastor of a mega church, and he sexually violated a child. There's quite a few cases that are coming out, and what makes it really hard, I think, for people to recognize that a pastor can harm someone, sexually violate somebody, lead them on, the list goes on, is they are charismatic and they seem powerful and they seem, you know, on top of the world when it comes to knowing God and wanting to preach the gospel, and the list goes on. But that's where I think most demons hide, is right in the middle of religion, right in the middle of a mega church. Not always, but sometimes that's where you're going to find it, because we're not going to look there. And we're not going to take our time to peel and pull back all the layers of a church and a pastor and his congregants, right? So we automatically believe it's a church. It's wonderful. And you may step in there and realize that it is a den of demons and thieves, right? And so sometimes, you know, I think the charismatic nature of a pastor can be very, very misleading. T Bunny Shy, it's good to see you. Welcome back tonight. All right, one more comment. Ooh, thank you for saying that. Scene 68, Dennis Rader. Yes, he's one of them. Yeah, that's one of them that I was thinking about. Thank you for that. But it's another one. I'm never going to remember it. I know I'm not. Oh, God. Helene Webster, did you have to go there? I love you guys. The things you say is amazing. Helene Webster, it's good to see you. Welcome back. She says attorneys. Yeah, you know, yeah. I have a few of those in my family. All right, guys, let's get to the inner demons piece of this, okay? Carl Jung says it's called shadow self. What's shadow self? It is parts of our personality that has been hidden. Okay, I'm going to say hidden, denied, or, oh, what's the other one? I'm going to say hidden or denied. Oh, here it is. Repressed. There we go. Carl Jung. His theory is very, very interesting. It's very interesting. We're not going to get into a lot of it tonight. The idea behind this is that he believes that we need to take those darker pieces of ourselves, those pieces of ourselves that we deny, that we push down, we hide, we cloak, we cover. We have to integrate rather than get rid of. Okay, so that's his theory, that we have these pieces of ourselves that's dark, that's dim, that's not very good. It isn't a very positive reflection of morals and ethics and character. He says that we have to figure out this shadow self. We have to figure out this other person, this other being, this other series of traits and characteristics. We have to figure that out. And then we have to integrate them into our healthy selves rather than get rid of them through expulsion. Now, if we're talking about demon possession, if we're talking about people who feel like they're battling demons, we're talking about a spirit or an entity that has taken control of, think about a car. You're driving along, right? You're you, and that person is them. And they seem to be behind the car. They seem to be behind the wheel of a car. And all of a sudden, they start taking in dark things, dark and evil concepts, dark and evil attitudes, right? They turn away from the light. They turn away from the truth. They turn away from the things that shines a bright, honest, moral, ethical truth on the things that are dark, evil, and hidden, right? You take in, you inhibit, or maybe I should say inhabit, those things on the inside. And a lot of times we can, and this would not be you or I, this would be the people that we are talking about who exist without a conscience. They take things in, it becomes a part of who they are, and it takes over. Just like somebody says, let me drive, right? You were driving, now I'm driving. And so now I'm dark and I'm evil. And my behaviors are not going to be very natural and normal. I'm going to do things that's going to make you question if there's a devil or not, because the things that I do is going to be that dark and evil, right? I'm going to confuse reality. I am going to be darkened in my thoughts. There's never going to be any innocent, morally correct thoughts in my head. It's all going to be dark and evil, right? And so in religion and mythology, this is called possession. That's what it's called, right? It is kind of like this being overtaken in a sense. Again, I'm driving, right? That darkness says, get out of this, get in the passenger side, go in the back seat, because now I'm driving. And when I drive, there's going to be dark thoughts. There's going to be a lack of emotion. There's going to be a lack of a conscience. There's going to be full-blown loss of control. Full-blown loss of control. It's parts of ourselves that is suffering, right? Guilt, shame, addiction. My grandfather, who was a theologist and a pastor for many years, he passed away in December of last year. But he would always say things like addiction is an inner demon. Dark thoughts to harm and kill somebody is a demon. That's the way he would describe that to me and my family. Being a theologian and a pastor for so many years, he strongly highlighted that these kind of things do exist, that something moves into the driver's seat and you end up in the passenger side or in the back seat. And when that happens, everything that person does, driven by that darkness and that evil presence and that evil spirit, is going to be a dark, evil thing that they do, because they are not here to have anything be peaceful. They are here to be wreckers of somebody's life. They're here to be destroyers of a person's soul, their mind. They're here to be a destructive force within them. My grandfather used to say all the time that a demon is like a entity that puts a person in this trance-like state, and everything that they do is driven by that darkness. And until they wake up and become delivered, that darkness is going to drive. And there is no therapy, there is no pill, and there is no medical procedure that is going to deliver them from that. My grandfather used to do exorcisms, believe it or not. And I was not there. I was a baby, maybe an infant. My mom and my family tell me about what happened. I'll briefly tell you. He had a young lady in his church, and my grandfather was a really you think I'm a brainiac. My grandfather was a brainiac. He was smart. He was wise. He was spiritually attuned to things. He studied religion, studied mythology, studied philosophy, studied existentialism. And he arrived at the conclusion that there is a thing called darkness, and it exists. It's not that you're thinking dark. It's not that you are doing dark things. There are some people who are born dark. He truly believed that they are here to create problems for everybody and then die, that there is a spirit that controls their thinking, their feelings, their behaviors. And again, it's like telling the conscious person to get into the passenger seat so the darkness and the evil can drive. And when that happens, they become very detached from themselves. He said there's a lack of conscience there. There's a lack of availability there. The person is like this small little tiny person somewhere on the inside, but that darkness takes over so much that person shifts and changes. And so I remember him telling me this, and I'm thinking, makes a lot of sense. And so he explained, this is why some people do things that are not normal. And it's hard to describe it medically, scientifically, psychologically, even philosophy can't explain it. And so these are the spiritual heights and the spiritual things that exist among us, and the things that he taught. Now, my mother was here. Many of my family members was with my grandfather when they did an exorcism. He had a young lady in a church. Well, she would visit his church all the time. So he had some kind of gathering at his home, prayer meeting. And this young lady, so I'm told by multiple family members, including my mom, she would come to all of his events, all of his Bible study groups, all of his support groups, educational groups. And she would always be the quiet one in the back. And one time, she came to a prayer meeting, and according to my mom, she sat in the background, and everybody was kind of like in a circle. My grandfather's leading this prayer meeting, and my mom and my family tell me that she was kind of like in the background, sitting in a chair, and my grandfather was trying to get her to be a part of the prayer meeting or the group setting, and she refused. And my grandfather, in the middle of praying, he attempted to pray for her. And in his attempt to pray for her, because she said she says that she had inner demons, right? She had those inner demons of alcoholism and sex addiction and, emotional turmoil. And, she was just very, very far out there. She was a prostitute. And my mom said that my grandfather went over to pray for her. And the minute he put his hands on her to pray for her, she began to shriek and say, "Get off of me." And she didn't want him to touch her. And my mom says, and my family says, and my grandfather said, okay, this person needs deliverance. So everybody started to pray over her. And my grandfather supposedly ended up in a battle with this woman. And she was spitting and kicking and urinating and screaming and screeching and doing all manner of evil right in my grandfather's, I'm going to call it his study hall. And my mom and my family, they explained that it was the most unheard sounds, the most, I'll say, unnatural sounds that they have ever heard come from a human being. And they were terrified. My grandfather was a very interesting man, because he, up until the day that he died, believed that he was in a battle with an inner demon in that woman. And the story and the details of the story is quite extraordinary. I always take the humble approach when I hear that story that my mom and my family tell me. I take the humble approach of, I don't have the answers, and neither does science. We try. But I do believe that there are situations where that can be a reality. Is that an everyday reality? Probably not. Is that an everyday experience that we might have or see before we die? Probably not. Are there people that walk among us that have inner demons that can act out like that? Probably so. Because we haven't met everybody on this planet, right? We only know our group. We only know our social group. So I always take the humble approach of, this is not scientific, neither is it psychological, but does it have relevance? Probably so. And it most definitely has relevance for people who claim they are battling inner demons. What do you do if you are impacted by somebody like this? Before we leave and wrap up, guys, what do you do? Well, it's hard to get away from people like this. You do want to shield yourself from them, right? Because they're destructive. Rather, whether they are without a conscience, a psychopath, a sociopath, or demon possessed, or dealing with shadow selves, whatever you want to call it, it's a person who is a destructive instrument in society because they are there to harm, right? My grandfather used to quote a scripture that the darkness, that the enemy, that the devil is there to kill, steal, and destroy. That was his famous term, right? And so I can kind of see that. I can very much see that also fitting a psychopath, right? They are there to destroy you. They are there to manipulate you. They are there to confuse you, to steal from you. And some psychopaths have killed. So they are there to kill, right? Not always. Some of them are. So I can see that in terms of a psychopath, if we want to look at the psychology of this. So what's the impact on you? You're in a relationship with somebody like this. You're married to somebody like this. You are in a family with somebody like this. You're probably going to have unmet emotional needs. A person without a conscience is cold and callous. You're also likely to have a terrorized childhood. Mom and dad is this way. Sibling is this way. You're probably going to have a terrorized childhood. Why is it terrorized? Because these people don't have a conscience. They bully, they harass, they follow, they harm you, they triangulate, they manipulate. Sometimes they cause you to have trauma, right? So a terrorized childhood. The other piece of this puzzle is that they violated trust. They can violate your trust in a minute. And so more than likely, you're going to struggle with that, right? You're probably going to have a series of repetitive traumas over time, and they're all going to pile up, right? If you're dealing with a family member like this, if your family involves any of the things that we talked about tonight, it's a traumatic experience. So you're likely to have multiple incidents of trauma with them, right? And feelings of deep isolation. Who do you go to and where do you go? What do you say? In a world that believes that everything is visual and perceptual and, scientific and medically driven. What do you do in a world that is constantly looking for material things, and yet they totally say that those things don't exist? Who do you run to, right? Who do you go to? And who do you go to when it comes to a psychopath? Sometimes it's really hard to get other people to see the psychopath sitting right there, right? So you're likely to experience these deep areas in your heart and your soul of isolation. This is a lot, right? It's a lot. Let me know in the chat box, guys, if you want me to talk a little bit more about the shadow self, demon possessed behavior. What does the DM say about demon possession? What is possession trance disorder? Does it exist? Does it not exist? What's the research on it? Let me know if you want us to focus on that. I'm happy to do that. This was a lot, right, guys? Let's go to the chat box. I'm going to skim a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because we are on here much longer than I anticipated. Okay. Penny and Rose, thank you so much for that. I'm so glad. Sometimes I touch on topics that causes people to cringe, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know how they're going to take this information, right? So I'm glad that it is helpful and insightful. And Ellie Wins here says, very interesting. Brandy Nuance says, yikes. Yes. Yeah, I know. It's a lot to take in, isn't it? It's a lot to take in. You know what my brothers say to me? My brothers, they say to me, I don't know how you do it. That's what they say to me. And my older brother, I'm like, why? He's like, I couldn't hold all of that information, And my younger brother, he's like, why would you want to know all these things? That makes life so uncomfortable and scary. And you know what I mean? So that's the question I get all the time. That's the question from my brothers I get all the time, and even from some of my clients. How do you do it? Lorefed says, they are cold and uncaring. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Jessica J says they are nicer to strangers than they are to family members. Sometimes they are. Yep, sometimes they are. Bear with me, guys. I'm scrolling because I'm behind. Honest Living Journey says disturbing individual. Yep. MS says, thank you for explaining the types of psychopaths. As sad as it is, it helps me to understand the majority of my family members a bit more. Mine don't get caught and stay out of jail. It sure is something. Yeah, you're welcome. And let me highlight very briefly. I don't want to keep talking because we're going to be in here a lot longer. But let me also say those who go to jail are secondary psychopaths because they're impulsive, they're reactive, they're hostile, they're angry, and they're volatile. Primary psychopaths are the ones that tend to stay out of jail because they're a lot smarter, they're more strategic, they're more calculating, that kind of thing. So, in short, that's the differences there. Kim says, sounds like my mother. Phil Bradley, I don't know if I welcomed you tonight. If I didn't, forgive me. Hello and welcome. It's good to see you back tonight. DIY Black Man, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Do you feel like you are and welcome to the channel, by the way. Do you feel like you're a secondary psychopath? I wouldn't self-diagnose. Now, if you have been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, then okay, we understand. But you definitely do not want to self-diagnose because it may not be a psychopath. So in case you haven't had a professional sit you down, give you the hair assessments. They're called, it's called the personality disorder scale. Okay. If you haven't been given a personality disorder scale by a professional who is experienced in treating psychopaths and antisocial personality, then you definitely don't want to self-diagnose, because what often looks like a psychopath and a sociopath and a antisocial personality could be trauma. It could also be a very high confidence level that's arrogant and very insensitive to other people. It could actually be narcissism and not psychopathy. So if you haven't gotten a true diagnosis, do not self-label. I love when people say, I'm a psychopath. The fact that you say you're a psychopath means you're not one. Keep that in mind. The fact that you say that you're a psychopath sometimes, if not all times, means you aren't, because you have self-awareness. And that's something that they don't always have. Okay. I had to throw you in there. I had to throw that in there. Okay. Christine says, that was what I was thinking. Frontal lobe damage. Yes. Yep. Fairy girl with the dabs. Troy Silver Fox says, when you're around monsters, it can be easy to become a bigger monster to protect yourself. Yes. That's a very, very good point. I'm going to star that comment. That's a good point. Global, hello and welcome to the channel. It's good to have you. Global says, insane, toxic people do not self-examine, just sane people trying to figure out the crazies. Gotcha. Totally. Yeah. People who are toxic, unhealthy, psychopathic, antisocial, they don't self-examine, right? You're not going to get a narcissist sit in front of a therapist who says, I'm a narcissist. It's not going to happen, right? Now, if the person is very low on the narcissism scale and they have some elements of narcissism, then they may have some self-awareness. But for the most part, you're not going to be able to self-diagnose or become very self-aware. Nancy says, does a brain aneurysm cause anxiety? It can. Are there any causal relationships between the two? I'm not aware of any, Nancy. But I do know traumatic brain injury can cause anxiety. Brain aneurysms, I'm not really sure on that one. Yeah, Christy's with me here. She's like parietal and occipital lobe. Do you guys know what that is? Parietal lobe is at the top, right? Right underneath your skull. It's at the top skull. It's at the top of the brain. Okay. The parietal lobes has a lot to do with perception, has a lot to do with like sensory stimulation. Okay. And the occipital lobes are in the back of the brain. And the occipital lobes help us to see and helps give us that occipital functioning that we have through our eyes, just so that you guys know what that is. Okay. All right, I'm going to skim to make sure I didn't miss anybody tonight. I'm trying not to. For those of you that I miss, I'm sorry. I can't get to all of you, but I really do try my best while juggling the material of the chats. And I really do try my best to see what you guys are saying after this goes off. So usually I take a 2-hour break and I come back and I watch it from beginning to end and I see you. So you're heard, you're seen. You know, a lot of times you guys have me laughing or you're teaching me things. So just know that if I don't get to you in a live chat, just know that I see you and I hear you. If you have a question for me, I'm gonna mention it the following live chat. All right, John Hill. Hello, my friend. Welcome back. It's good to see you back tonight. Savak in the club. I'm going to say it that way. Hello and welcome to the channel. It's good to have you. Savak in the club says, my younger cousin seemed to use me by putting me down and trying to use me. He said, my mom is like him and they are both like psychopaths. Oh God. Yeah, that's the dynamic right there. I'm sorry. Oh my God. Yeah. Lady Kathleen Marie Phipps, hello and welcome. Welcome to the channel. It's so good to have you. She says, admire your delivery and consciousness to share. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for saying that. That's wonderful. Thank you. Let's keep moving, guys. Okay. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any of you. Okay. Axe to Edge. Here we go. Axe to Edge says psychology and demonology then sound very far removed from each other. They can be. You want to know this? Psychology and demonology used to be together. Psychology and philosophy used to kind of be together, and so did existentialism. But here's what happened. Somewhere along life's journey, they decided to separate because they couldn't agree. The cause of human suffering cannot be agreed upon. So psychology separated from philosophy, psychology separated from demonology, psychology separated from existentialism, and psychology separated from the medical field. Now, here's what's interesting. All of those fields are trying to reroute themselves back together. Can you believe that? And they're trying to reroute themselves back together because now we are smarter. And we realize that we have to bring in the spiritual world. We have to bring in philosophy. We have to bring in existentialism. We have to bring in medicine in order to understand the human mind, emotions, and behaviors that are before us. So we're getting smarter. They shouldn't have never separated in the first place, but thank God we're coming back around to be in a group again. And I think that's really powerful. Yeah. All right, guys, one more comment. Brandy Nuance says, wow. I know. Has this live chat shook you up, Brandy? It kind of shook me up a little bit. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah. Oh, doing well. How are you, Robbie? Robbie Gibson, welcome to tonight's live chat. It's good to see you. Yeah, totally agree with that. It doesn't it? It sounds like it's all integrated somehow, right? Yeah. Yeah, totally agree with that. Damian Hayes, hello and welcome. It's good to have you on the channel. And thank you for joining us tonight. Yeah, I love that. That's kind of you. I'm going to leave that up there. Okay. Godson 144. Hello and welcome to the channel. It's so good to have you. Godson 144 says, yeah, that's pretty deep. Yeah, I understand. This has been a pretty edgy conversation, right? Godson 144 or 144 says, we need shed light on it. Yes, we do. I agree. Okay. Mark Lee. Hello, my friend. Welcome back. It's good to have you. I'm going to put your comment up there on the screen for people to see. Yeah, they do have very rigid definitions. I agree with that. Whoops. I agree with that. They do. Yeah. I agree with that. My grandfather struggled with that for many, many years because each of the definitions of the fields are very rigid. I agree with that. Penny and Rose, thank you so much for that kind comment. I appreciate you. One more comment. We're going to go. Jessica J says, aren't we born with a conscience? Yes and no. Yes and no. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Yes and no. Yes, but some theories say no. Some theory says yes. Some research says yes and no. So we're going to get to it, guys. Okay, we're going to get to it. I may post some articles in the comments section once we sign off here for you if you want to go back. Ooh, didn't mean for that to happen. Okay, I hit the wrong button. You guys have such awesome comments. I can't wait to go through all of them. I'm going to just mention one last person before we go. And MS, what visual? Oh, this visual? The visual I threw on the floor? This? Is this the visual? MS, are you watching? There you go. Okay. Play the tape back and then you can pause me. All right, we're going to end there. Guys, you're wonderful. I hope, even though this was a tough topic tonight, that you were able to laugh a little bit with me. There's some psychology to my laughter with you every now and then in some of the jokes I've been throwing out there, because this is a very, very, very heavy topic. So I hope you were able to feel enlightened and educated, and then, have some laughter all at the same time and some connection and validation. I just hope you got all of it in tonight's live chat. Thank you so much for being a continual part of the channel. I love your participation. It's beautiful to watch on my end of things. You can't see all of this that's here, but I can. And it's just wonderful to see what you say to each other and how you guys are communicating. So thank you so much for that. All right, guys, have a safe and peaceful Saturday night and Sunday, and I'll see you next week. Good night, guys.